really break down some complex stuff into knowledge you can actually use. If you feel like you're drowning in information sometimes, well, think of this as your shortcut, your way to stay informed without all the noise. Today, we're taking a deep breath, actually, and tackling a topic that, frankly, needs a more grown-up conversation. The reality of living with conditions like ADHD and ODD, and not just as kids. We're talking about adulthood.
Yeah.
Careers, relationships, just managing life.
Exactly. And our source material for this deep dive is really fascinating. It comes from excerpts of research compiled in a work called ADHD and ODD in Adulthood, Unspoken Struggles. We're focusing specifically on insights from one of their analyses, an episode they titled ADHD and ODD into Adulthood, What Nobody Told Us. So our mission today really is to quickly pull out the key struggles adults face with these conditions, the ones people don't talk about enough. And maybe more importantly, what are the actual coping mechanisms? What helps people not just cope, but, thrive? We're zeroing in on those unspoken struggles.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the first big takeaway, the foundation, really, from the research is pretty stark. These aren't things you just grow out of. For so long, right, if an adult had trouble with organization or keeping emotions in check, it was just seen as, what, a character flaw? Laziness.
Precisely. The research really hammers this home. Many kids grow into adults still struggling with symptoms. And that shift, acknowledging that, is just huge for you listening. It means recognizing that for a lot of people, this is about lifelong management. It's not just a phase. And if we don't get that, we're kind of setting adults up for failure, aren't we? And this immense psychological weight.
Yeah.
And think about the sort of cumulative effect, maybe a late diagnosis or just years of feeling like you've somehow failed at being an adult.
Right.
We're not just talking about, I can't focus on this report. It's deeper. It's persistent executive dysfunction.
Right. Brain's management system.
Exactly. That system's struggling with taxes, mortgage applications, long-term career stuff. Recognizing it's neurobiological, that's step one. It allows for self-compassion, for finding actual strategies.
Okay, so once we accept that persistence, that it doesn't just vanish, then the conversation has to shift to how these symptoms look different in adults, right? Because the support structure changes. Childhood has parents, teachers, bells ringing.
Built-in structure, yeah.
Adulthood, you're supposed to provide all that structure yourself, internally. And that seems to be where things can really unravel.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the research points to 3 specific areas where these adult symptoms show up. Often they look like just bad life choices from the outside.
Okay, so let's dig into those. Where does it start? Professionally, the source mentions impulsive jobs.
Impulsive jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a concise term for what happens when that executive dysfunction hits the workplace. It's not just, I'm bored. It's more fundamental. It's that difficulty sustaining focus or finding internal motivation when a task isn't new or immediately rewarding.
So that leads to instability.
Jumping around.
Yeah, a pattern of instability, frequent job changes.
Yeah.
And it's often not because the person isn't capable, but maybe that initial excitement, that hyper-focus on something new, it fades. And what's left is the day-to-day grind, the admin, the stuff that can be really hard to tolerate. And the impulsivity part means maybe quitting suddenly without another job lined up, or making big career shifts based on a fleeting passion or frustration.
Okay, but hang on. I mean, lots of people get restless at work, don't they? How does the research separate that from, normal job dissatisfaction?
That's a really important distinction, and it comes down to the why and the pattern. Most people, if they're unhappy, they might start looking around, planning a move, negotiating. It's more methodical. For an adult really struggling with this symptom, the change is often abrupt. It feels like an urgent escape from discomfort, maybe from boredom, long projects, dealing with difficult colleagues. It's that repeated pattern of instability and the kind of financial chaos that often follows that points towards a symptom, not just, wanting a change of scenery. Right, the pattern. That makes perfect sense. So if that instability is happening at work, it's probably showing up elsewhere too. The research moves from impulsive jobs right into restless relationships.
It does.
And you can see the parallel. Like in childhood, ODD might be arguing with parents, but adult relationships need sustained effort, compromise, that internal structure again. If that's a struggle, long-term partnerships must be really difficult.
And this is where the ODD component often weaves in with the ADHD traits in adulthood. That oppositional streak, when it's internalized, it can make compromise feel almost impossible sometimes, like feeling controlled by a partner's reasonable needs or routines. So they might deeply want connection, but then the relationship demands predictability, managing finances together, household chores, planning things, and that internal resistance just flares up. What's fascinating here is and the source touches on this, is that the ADHD need for novelty can play out in relationships too.
How so?
Well, either by getting bored and leaving a relationship once it becomes stable, or, and this is interesting, sometimes by subconsciously provoking conflict just to create stimulation, to make things less predictable. That might be part of the restless quality.
Wow, provoking conflict for stimulation. That's a powerful idea. And it connects directly to the third thing the research highlights, which is maybe the most visible one, anger flare-ups. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It really does, because we tend to just label that as someone having a bad temper. But the analysis suggests it's often more about a breakdown in emotional regulation, stemming from chronic underlying frustration. Think about it. If you're constantly battling your own brain just to do basic adulting, paying bills, keeping track of things, managing the house, there's this huge buildup of internal pressure. Shame, maybe.
Right, this constant low-level stress.
Exactly. It's like a powder keg. So when something challenging happens, or maybe there's perceived criticism, which can trigger that ODD resistance to being told what to do, all that pent-up frustration explodes. The anger isn't really about the specific trigger in that moment. It's about the massive ongoing effort of just trying to hold it all together. It's a dysregulated response.
Okay, so the struggle persists. It morphs into these adult issues, impulsive jobs, restless relationships, anger flare-ups, all rooted in executive function and regulation difficulties. So the big question for you listening is, okay, what do I do about it? How do you move from just enduring this to actively managing it?
Yes, and this is where the research becomes really empowering, I think. It points to 3 core tools that work together.
And the good news, right, is that these are generally accessible things. But the adult has to be the one to seek them out.
That's the crucial step, self-advocacy. So the 3 tools the source emphasizes working in combination are therapy, medication, and routines.
Okay, let's break those down. Therapy first. What kind of therapy? Because, like you said, if it's an executive function issue, maybe generic talk therapy isn't the most effective.
That's exactly right. The research points towards more specialized approaches for adults. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Okay.
But often a version specifically adapted for ADHD to help challenge those negative thought patterns that build up after years of struggle. I'm lazy, I'm incapable. CBT tackles that. But maybe even more impactful, according to the sources, is ADHD coaching.
How is coaching different from therapy?
Coaching is generally more future-focused, very action-oriented. It directly targets the executive function deficits. So a coach helps you build practical external systems, organizational strategies, time management techniques, ways to break down tasks. It's like building the scaffolding your brain needs to handle things like, well, avoiding those impulsive job decisions.
Building scaffolding. I like that metaphor. Okay, what about medication? It's often part of the picture. But how does the research see its role specifically for adults?
Medication, when it's the right kind and dosage and properly managed, is often seen as providing that essential baseline.
Right.
It helps with the underlying attention regulation and impulse control. It kind of levels the playing field internally so that the other strategies, the therapy, the coaching, the routines can actually stick.
It creates the stability needed for the other tools to work.
Exactly. It's hard to consistently practice CBT techniques or build a new routine if your internal state is all over the place. Medication can provide that platform.
Okay, platform build. Then the third tool, routines. You mentioned building scaffolding. Routines sound like part of that structure.
Absolutely central. If we connect this to the bigger picture, routines are powerful because they essentially externalize executive function.
Say more about that. Externalize it how?
Well, if your brain struggles with planning, initiating, following through on tasks, the core of executive dysfunction, then automating those tasks through routines reduces the mental effort needed. It lowers the activation energy required to get started, and it reduces the number of decision points where impulsivity can creep in.
Oh, okay. So for the impulsive jobs thing.
Right. A really solid, automatic morning routine, maybe a structured way to start your workday, an end-of-day checklist. These things create predictability. They act as guardrails against suddenly quitting or making rash decisions driven by momentary frustration.
And for relationships.
Same principle. Structure things like, say, regular date nights, agreed upon ways to handle disagreements, scheduled times for chores or budget talks. It reduces the daily friction and chaos that can fuel restlessness or lead to those anger flare-ups.
Reduce the friction, reduce the pressure.
Precisely. Routines make daily life smoother, which lowers that background level of stress and frustration, making those explosive outbursts less likely.
That makes so much sense. Reducing friction lowers the anger threshold. That's really insightful. And this loops back to something you said earlier, which the research really stresses. The adult has to take the reins. They have to seek this help themselves.
Yes, that shift is critical.
In childhood, it's often parents advocating, pushing for diagnosis, setting up support.
But for adult success, the research is clear. You have to move from being sort of passively treated to actively managing your own condition, being your own advocate.
What does that look like in practice?
It means owning the narrative. It's saying, okay, I have this condition, it's real, it's persistent, and I need specific strategies or accommodations instead of just internalizing it as I'm failing at being an adult. It means making the call to find a coach or therapist. It means being consistent with medication if that's part of the plan. And crucially, it means doing the hard work of establishing and sticking to those routines, even when it's boring, even when the novelty wears off. That act of self-advocacy, of taking ownership, that's what helps transform someone who feels like they're constantly just surviving into someone who can actually thrive.
That idea of shifting agency, taking ownership, it feels incredibly powerful. It's not, I'm broken, it's, I understand my brain and I'm designing my life to support it.
Exactly. Proactive design, not just reactive coping.
So what does this all mean? Let's try and crystallize this. We dived into these often unspoken adult struggles with ADHD and ODD, and the core insights seem to be, first, really internalizing that these are persistent, lifelong challenges tied to how the brain manages things, executive function.
Yep, persistence is key.
Second, understanding how they show up specifically in adulthood, those impulsive jobs, restless relationships, and anger flare-ups aren't just personality quirks.
They're often symptoms.
And third, knowing that there's a path to management, a specific combination of tools, the right kind of therapy or coaching, medication potentially as that foundation, and crucially building those consistent routines to act as external support.
Right. Therapy, medication, routines working together, and building on that practical third point about routines. Maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Since the research really underscores how effective routines are, and we know these conditions can feed on chaos, maybe think beyond just setting a morning alarm. How could you intentionally restructure your environment, your living space, your workspace? Instead of constantly fighting the impulse, how could you design your surroundings, your desk layout, how you organize your kitchen, maybe even your digital spaces to make the right choice, the managed choice, the path of least resistance? Maybe management isn't just about fixing your brain's internal wiring, but also about consciously designing the world around you to support the brain you actually have.
Designing your life around your neurobiology, not just fighting against it. Wow. That's a powerful way to think about it, a real call to action. Thank you for joining us for this really important deep dive. We genuinely hope this knowledge empowers you, maybe helps you think about self-design in a new way.